Shalom Evracha, welcome to the weekly Shiur in Zera Shimshon. Today is the 26th day of Chodesh Sivan, Chav Vav Sivan, Thursday, Parsha Shelach here in Chutz La'aretz, Parsha's Korach in Eretz Yisrael, Tovshim Pei Vav. The Welt calls this season the Chasna season, as many people, Beis Hashem Yisbarach, get married between Shavuos and Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. And Baruch Hashem, there's many chasnas to go to and to be mishtatev. And Yiddish shtiba being built, and each young couple that's building a new shtub, a new Beis, is davening to the Eibishter. They should be zoiche to build a Beis Ne'eman B'Yisrael. They should be zoiche to Zara, Chaya, V'Kayama, and they should see a lot of nachas and simcha. In the light of that, let's learn the first piece in Zera Shimshon, Parsha Shelach, which the piece itself is a skula, as we know and as we mentioned every time. And this piece we'll try, Beis Hashem Yisbarach, to tie in to the Chasna season and what the message can be for all those young couples building new homes in these times. The pasuk says, "Vayikra Moshe lo Yishaya benin Yehoshua." Moshe Rabbeinu made a Shiur Hashem. Yehoshua's name was Hosea. Moshe Rabbeinu added the letter Yud. Perish Rashi. Why did he add the letter Yud? Ka Yoshiacha matzas meraglim. Since he added the letter Yud, and Hosea has a letter Hey, starts off with a Hey. Now we have a Shem Yud K, and the Shem Yud K will help you matzas meraglim. Frag the Zera Shimshon Kasha. Lama ka Yoshiacha. What's the understanding that it's got to do with the Shem Yud K that's going to help him matzas beraglim? Just say he made a Shiur Hashem when Chas v'Shalom there's somebody unwell and it comes to a stage that they make a Shiur Hashem. It's the letter that you change. Sometimes they add a name, sometimes they can add a letter to a name. In the times of Chazal. But why do you have to make a word ka? Just say it's a new name. Every letter has a new spiritual energy. So why do you have to have the ka Yoshiacha? You didn't add the hey. The hey was there from before. What's the understanding? You add a yud, and it makes up the word ka, and that helps Yehoshua from being nichshol in that tzas meraglim, and also why one just enough to daven for him. If it's a tefillah, ka Yoshiach tzas meraglim, the daven for him. You have to add a letter to his name. These are the kashas that the Zera Shimshon asks. Says the Zera Shimshon, v'yeshloima, I want to suggest the following. The Zohar says, what caused the meraglim to sin and to say lashon hara against Eretz Yisrael? There were big tzaddikim at the beginning. The pasuk says, "Kilam anoshim rosh bnei Yisrael heima." Says the Zohar HaKadosh, famous words, "Aval inun debara legarmayu eita bisha," which means the Zohar says they had a negia, these great tzaddikim, that they knew iyal the Yisrael la'ara. If we go into Yisrael, they will lose their positions. They will no longer have their position that they had in the midbar. And there won't be Rosh B'nai Yisrael because they had that negia. They wanted to stay in control in the position they had. That caused them to badmouth Eretz Yisrael in order to stay in the midbar, in order their positions shouldn't be threatened. As I say in the Zera Kodesh, there was a pagam in the middle of Gaiva. They were about a Gaiva on a certain level, and they decided that we can't lose my position. I can't afford that. But Kasim Mekabolim says as Zera Shimshon Mekabolim, right? The Shem Ka, the Shem of Yud K, Einoi Shoira al Bala Gaiva. Yud K doesn't work with Gaiva. The Gaiva is Gematria 15, Yud K. These Meraglim sinned because of the Gaiva, Shenisyaru, that they'll lose their position. Lirmois al Zeh. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, what can I do to get Yeshua ben Nun not to be a Balgaiva? So he made a remes. I'm going to add a letter, but that's not the objective. The objective is, let it read Yud K. Yud K is 15. That's gematria gaiva, and it's gematria ka, because the Shem ka counteracts gaiva. Like that, he'll be safe. V'ama ka yoshiacha, kloima rohu shashem yoshiacha. Ka yoshiacha means now we know that you're worthy of being saved. The fishaya anov k'dei shlo yachtek b'heim. Ain't a tefillah mamash. It's not a tefillah that he was asking. He just says, this is a taina. This is a hechrach, that you won't be nechshel in the chet amraglim because you have the Shem Yud-Kei. Yud-Kei does not work. It's not Shoir. It doesn't rest when you have gaiva. The antithesis of Yud-Kei is gaiva. And that's why he says, Zera Shimshon nicha. Why did Moshe only do this to Yeshua and not to Kalev? Why didn't he daven on Kalev? Terence says, because Yeshua knew was an anof. Yeshua represents another. He was the dedicated Talmud to Moshe Rabbeinu. He didn't budge without his Rebbe. So Moshe Rabbeinu saw he had the character trait of another. Therefore, he had what it takes not to be nichshel. He wasn't convinced about Kalev. Yeshua did what it takes in order not to be nichshel. Therefore, you help Yeshua. Yeshua learned from his master what it means to be humble. Yeshua he was Dovikin Moshe. Moshe is the Ish Moshe Adam Oid. Therefore, Moshe says, okay, I'm going to clinch the deal. I'm going to ensure that you will not be nichshel. That's what the Targum Yonson says that all his foreign bring. What caused Moshe Rabbeinu to add the Yud? Says the Targum Yonson ben Izuel. The Kadchama Moshe Rabbeinu saw in the Senusei. He saw how humble Yeshua is. Kara Moshe, that if he called him Yehoshua, there if he called him Yehoshua, he added the letter Yud to the Hoshea, makes Ka. Ka is Gematria Gaiva, and meaning the Shem Ka can only be Shoir when there's no Gaiva, and that caused Yehoshua ben Nun not to be Nichshel, but Chet Hamaraglim. And I would add something, maybe on the other side, in the Heilige Sefer Yitzvach Yisrael, that Alexander Rebbe, in the first piece he brings from his father, the Adler of Alexander. What was the Chet Hamaraglim? What did they do wrong? They were told to go to Israel and give an honest report. They came back and did exactly that. They gave an honest report. They said about the land. They said about the Peiros. They said about the giant. They didn't exaggerate. They didn't lie. So what's the problem? Why are we so mad at the Meraglim? Zog the Heilige Yitzvach Yisrael, you know what the problem was? Of course, they said an accurate report, but did one thing terribly wrong. What does a person do when he sees that things are scary? Things don't look like they're going to work out. They said, we'll go to Israel. In a deeper sense, they were afraid not only about the physical giants, about the spiritual pitfalls that Israel has. There's a zel oma zel osalakim. What's going to be? So that's very good. But there's one thing that you're missing, Meraglim. What's that? Although you're afraid, although you're scared, those feelings are warranted. But don't make a decision, therefore, not to follow Hashem. Therefore, I can't do this. That is wrong. Yaakov was also afraid. Shem yigram achet. V'yira Yaakov oy v'yetzeloi. But you don't not do what the Eibishter wants because you're afraid. You march forward and you listen to the Eibishter. This was the pegam of the Meraglim. The Meraglim says, therefore, we're not going. Bad idea. Hashem says to go, but we're too afraid. Therefore, we'll make this decision not to go. What does this come from? Says the Yitzvach Yisrael, this comes from false anova. You feel so humble and so small and so afraid. We won't be able to do it. Calm down. Who said you won't be able to? Where is your vayikba liboy b'darkei Hashem? Go for it. Hashem says you should do it. Undertake it. Don't be humble in the wrong places. This is false anova. The Meraglim had this middle of anova that they use in a false direction. So they had the gaiva that they use falsely, and they had the anova used falsely. It's impossible. I can't accept it by myself to wake up in the morning and go to a shiur. It'll never happen. That is gaiva de psula. That was the pagam of the Meraglim. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid Yeshua shouldn't be nichshal in this, says the Yismach Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu gave the name Ka to give Yeshua ben Nun the right level of gaiva. And therefore we can add, if you want to put together the two pieces, Ka Yoshiacha, Ka is Gematria Gaiva. Says Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshua ben Nun, I want you to have the right balance. There is a Ka Diga Gaiva, a Kedusha Diga Gaiva. Yes, we can do it. We will be strong. We will persevere. We will manage. We have within us godliness, helikite, through the challenges, through the difficulties. But that's not a reason to despair. That's not a reason to give up. And you have to know when to use the gaiva, when to use the anova. The Meragim got it all wrong. They had the gaiva that they want their position, and they used that in a perverted way. They had anova and used that in the wrong way. Yeshua gets it right. He's an anov nali yamish b'taycha oil, and he's gaiva, and he says Hashem says we'll do it. Yochel nuchala. We will manage. We will be victorious. We will overcome the challenges. And this is the balance that's necessary for every single yid. And this ties into the chasna season. Chasna Mekala build a Beis Neman. The Gemara tells us, Rashi elaborates, every Yiddish shtub has the Shem Havaya. How does it have the Eibishter's name? The Ish is spelled Aleph Yud Shin. He has the Yud. The woman is Isha. Aleph Shun Hey. She has the Hey. Together, you have the Ka. Kibekat Shem Tzur Elamim. The Eibishter creates the world with Ka. Every young couple creates their new world with Yud and Hey. And this is the Gematria Gaiva. And we have to have the balance. On one hand, they mavatl themselves to Das Torah, mavatl themselves to give respect to others, and they are humble, and they know that they need a lot of siyata d'shma, a lot of tefillahs. But on the other hand, they have Ka Gematria Gaiva to understand, yes, Yachal Nuchala, we will build a Beis Neman al Adne HaMesirah. We will have children, sons and daughters, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, that'll be a source of nachas to the Eibishter in today's generation, with all the challenges and all the difficulties, because this is a true Beis Neman, when we have the Yud and we have the Hey. So the Eibishter help and all the Yiddish Shtubah that are being built, and all those that have been built, should be zeicha to Zara Chai V'Kiyama in the schus of the Heilige Zera Shimshon, and we should be zeicha to Yeshuas and Refuas, and to see Nisim and Eflaas, and be zeicha to Bias B'Shef Tzidkenu, a good Shabbos, Besuras Tavis.